You ever have one of those moments where reality feels so surreal, it's almost like you've stumbled into the middle of a soap opera? That's exactly how this story begins. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning in my quiet suburban neighborhood. You know, the kind of morning where the loudest sound is usually a lawnmower down the street, or maybe a delivery truck rumbling by. My husband was at work, my cat was curled up by the window, and I was sitting at my desk nursing an iced coffee while half paying attention to emails. And then, I heard it. At first, I thought someone had cranked their TV up way too loud. The kind of dramatic screaming you'd expect from a reality show reunion special. But within seconds, I realized this wasn't TV. This was real. The yelling was coming from outside. I froze for a moment, listening. My heart picked up, because this wasn't just raised voices, this was raw, primal anger. I tiptoed to the front window, slid one blind just enough to peek, and my jaw nearly hit the floor. There she was, my neighbor. Standing barefoot on her front porch, pajama pants twisted around her ankles, tank top clinging like she had just rolled out of bed. Her hair was messy, but her face was fire, and in front of her, dragging a massive black suitcase down the steps, was her husband. He wasn't yelling back. He wasn't even making eye contact. He just gripped the suitcase, handle like it weighed nothing, his jaw locked, his eyes fixed on the car at the curb. But she was unraveling. Her voice cracked as she screamed, "So you're just gonna walk out after everything? After all these years?" He didn't answer. He kept walking. Her voice went sharper, desperate. "Be a man for once and say it to my face. Look at me. Tell me why you're leaving." Nothing. Not even a flinch. And then came the line that made my stomach twist. "You'll regret this when she leaves you too." She. My neighbor wasn't yelling about work or about money. She was yelling about another woman. And suddenly, the pieces started fitting together in the ugliest way possible. By now, the husband had shoved the suitcase into the trunk. He slammed it shut, jumped in the car, and with a roar of the engine, he sped off so fast his tires screeched. The sound echoed down the street. My neighbor? She was left on the porch, arms crossed, chest heaving, her face blotchy with rage and heartbreak. And just when I thought the show was over, another car pulled up. This one wasn't just any car. A silver BMW, gleaming like it had just rolled out of a dealership ad. The door opened, and out stepped her sister. I swear to you, I nearly dropped my coffee, because the sister looked like she had walked straight off a set for Brunch in Beverly Hills. Designer sunglasses, sleek hair, a flowy outfit that probably cost more than my entire grocery budget for the month. The contrast was brutal. One sister barefoot in crumpled pajamas, veins bulging from screaming, the other stepping out calm, collected, almost smug. And my neighbor's face? Oh, you could feel the rage boil over just from her body language. She stormed down the porch steps and shouted across the yard, "Of course you show up now. Of course." The sister didn't back down. Not even a second of hesitation, she snapped right back. Well, someone had to. He needed somebody who actually listens to him for once. My jaw dropped. I choked on my iced coffee, because that wasn't just a dig. That was a confession. That was a sister saying the quiet part out loud. They were face to face now, and the energy was electric. My neighbor jabbed a finger in her sister's direction, her words slicing the air. "He was my husband, mine, and you were supposed to be my sister." The sister's expression didn't even crack. She tilted her head, lowered her sunglasses just enough to meet her sister's eyes, and in the calmest voice imaginable, the kind of calm that makes your blood boil because you know it's meant to get under your skin, she said, "He told me you'd do this." And with that, she turned, walked back to her BMW, and shut the door like nothing had happened. The engine purred to life. The car glided away. And my neighbor? She just stood there. Frozen, no more screaming, no more tears, just stillness. Like the weight of everything had suddenly pressed down at once, and for the first time she had nothing left to say. She stood on that porch for a solid 5 minutes before finally slipping back inside, shutting the door, and leaving the street, eerily silent again. But oh, this was just the beginning. Because half an hour later, The sound of glass clinking echoed from her backyard. And when I looked out my office window, I realized Act 2 was about to begin. The street went quiet after the BMW disappeared, but it wasn't the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the heavy kind, the kind that sits on your chest and makes you feel like something terrible has just happened, and maybe still is. I went back, upstairs, sat at my desk, and tried to pretend I was working, but every time my fingers touched the keyboard, my ears strained for another sound. My cat had even lifted his head from the window ledge, ears twitching, like he too was waiting for the next episode of whatever this was. And then, clink. At first it was faint, just a sharp little tap, like glass against metal. Then again, clink, clink. I pushed my chair back and pressed to the window, peering down into the side yard that divided our houses. From the second floor, I could see over the fence into her backyard, and there she was, my neighbor again. But this time, she wasn't screaming. She was performing. She had a box of empty wine bottles, dozens of them, and she was tossing them, one by one, into the recycling bin. Not gently, not like she was cleaning up. No, this was deliberate, slow, almost dramatic. Each bottle arced through the air, then crashed into the bin with a sharp, echoing clink. It was like she wanted the whole neighborhood to hear. Every toss carried something behind it: anger, grief, humiliation. I watched her shoulders rise and fall with each throw as if she was exhaling pieces of herself into that bin. And then she stopped. She sank down onto the curb, elbows on her knees, and pulled out a cigarette. I froze again, because in all the years I'd lived next to her, I had never, not once, seen her smoke. She lit it with shaking hands, took a long drag, exhaled a plume of gray into the warm evening air. The ember glowed at the tip as she stared into nothing. It was the picture of defeat. But here's the thing, I wasn't sure if it was real defeat or something else. Something darker, because even from my window, even with the distance between us, there was this aura around her. The kind of aura that didn't say, "I'm broken." It said, "I'm thinking." That cigarette, that glass crashing, it wasn't just catharsis. It was processing, calculating. I stayed at the window with my cat, silent spectators to a woman at the edge of her own life's cliffhanger. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it was over. She stubbed the cigarette out, stood up, and disappeared back inside. Every blind in her house closed. Lights dimmed. The stage went dark. For hours. Nothing. By the time the sun set, I thought maybe that really had been the finale. That tomorrow, maybe things would start looking normal again. But I was wrong. Because around dinner time, I found myself pacing. Something about seeing her like that. Barefoot, screaming, then sitting alone in silence with nothing but cigarettes and empty bottles. It stuck with me. My husband texted to ask how the drama show was going, and I caught myself typing, "It feels wrong to just watch. She looks alone." He replied, "So take her something. Dinner, maybe." At first, I laughed. I mean, what was I supposed to do? Knock on her door like a casserole-carrying sitcom neighbor? But the longer I thought about it, the more it felt like the right thing. So when dinner was ready, pasta, steak, garlic bread, I put together a plate. On impulse, I added some of the brownies my husband had baked earlier, because if anyone deserved chocolate that night, it was her. I carried the plate over, my hands trembling just enough to make me nervous. My heart was racing. I didn't know what I was walking into. When I knocked, she answered faster than I expected. For a split second, I braced myself for her to lash out, to mistake me for someone else. But instead, she looked tired, drained. Makeup smeared, eyes puffy, hair still. A mess. But when she saw the plate, her expression softened. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. I managed a weak smile. "I know, but I thought maybe you could use it." To my surprise, she stepped aside. "Come in." Her house was dim, blinds drawn tight. The air smelled faintly of red wine and something floral, like a candle that had burned itself out hours ago. We sat at her kitchen table. There was already a half-poured glass of wine in front of her. She pushed it aside, then stared at the plate I'd brought like she wasn't sure whether to eat it or cry over it. Finally, I broke the silence. "How are you doing?" Not, "What happened?" Not, "Are you okay?" Just, "How are you doing?" And that's when her shoulders dropped. She let out this long, heavy exhale like she'd been holding her breath all day. Then she started talking. And what came out wasn't just a confession. It was a floodgate. She told me about the iPad. How she'd picked it up one night and saw a message pop up. How she followed the trail, confronted her husband, and learned the truth. That he had been sleeping with her own sister. She confirmed everything I'd suspected. The betrayal, the lies, the explosion I'd witnessed earlier on that porch. But the more she spoke, the less she sounded like a victim, and the more she sounded like something else. She told me, "I made it easy for him to cheat. I haven't been emotionally available for months." Her voice was flat, matter of fact. She explained how she'd been focused on herself, how she knew he felt ignored. But then she added, with this cold little smile, "I just didn't think he'd be dumb enough to actually do it." That line sent chills down my spine, because there was no heartbreak in it, no grief, just strategy. And the longer she talked, the clearer it became. This wasn't a woman crushed by betrayal. This was a woman recalculating her next move, and though she didn't know it yet, that next move was going to be revenge. Her words came out in a steady stream, like a faucet left on too long. Once she started talking, she barely stopped to breathe. I sat across from her, my plate of brownies untouched between us, and just listened. Because it felt like she hadn't had anyone to listen in months, maybe years. "Do you want to know the funny part?" she said, twirling her glass of wine like it was a prop in some cruel comedy. It wasn't even hard to find out. He left his iPad unlocked. I wasn't even snooping. A message popped up. Her name. And in that 1 second, everything unraveled. Her eyes glinted as she spoke, but not with tears. With something sharper. She told me how she confronted him, how he stammered and tried to explain, how eventually the truth spilled out. And then her laugh, low, bitter. I didn't cry. Not then. Not when he admitted it. I just looked at him and thought, of course it's her. Who else? Her sister. The way she said it was laced with years of history. She leaned back, arms crossed, eyes narrowing like she was replaying decades of rivalry in her head. She's always been jealous. Always. When we were kids, she wanted my clothes. When we were teenagers, she wanted my friends. And when we were adults, she wanted my life, my house, my marriage, my everything. Her lip curled. So really, it was inevitable. She's been circling for years, just waiting for something to crack. And he was stupid enough to hand her the opening. I tried to say something, anything, but she cut me off, her voice firm. You know the sad part? I wasn't even surprised. Not by her, not by him. I knew our marriage was on its last leg months ago. I was done, emotionally gone. But I wasn't about to be the one to end it. Because I liked the upper hand in every exit. She said it so casually, like it was a rule she lived by. And it sent a shiver down my spine. This wasn't heartbreak. This wasn't devastation. This was strategy. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. Do you know what I told my mom? I told her not to call my sister, not to comfort her, not to even mention her. Because I wanted it clear, crystal clear, which side the family was on. Mine. Always mine. I sat frozen, nodding like some kind of wide-eyed reporter taking notes on a scandal I hadn't signed up to cover, and she kept going. I know how this looks. Poor wife betrayed by her husband and her sister. Easy narrative. But here's the truth. They didn't break me. They freed me. I've been checked out for months. He was background noise at this point. She was an annoyance. Now they've handed me the perfect excuse to clean house. Her tone, calm, almost amused, unsettled me more than if she'd been sobbing, because she wasn't unraveling. She was tightening. Every sentence was measured, every detail carefully placed. She wasn't telling me her pain. She was laying out her case. And the scariest part? She was convincing. People think the worst part of betrayal is the shock, she said, swirling her wine again. But no. The worst part is realizing you already knew. Deep down, you knew. This was coming. It was never if. It was when. That line hit me like ice water. She tipped back the rest of her wine, set the glass down with a soft clink, and looked me dead in the eye. At least I didn't lose anything important. Just two. People I outgrew anyway. The silence after that stretched long and heavy. My breath caught, because I couldn't tell if it was a coping mechanism, or if she truly believed it. I searched her face for a crack, for grief, regret, something human, but there was nothing. Just that eerie calm. That was the moment I realized. She wasn't just surviving this. She was planning, calculating. And her husband, her sister, they had no idea what storm was about to hit them, because betrayal cuts deep. But revenge, when it comes from someone this composed, this methodical, it cuts deeper. The thing about revenge is, most people imagine it as loud, screaming, shouting, throwing clothes out on the lawn, maybe even keying a car or two. But not her. My neighbor wasn't going to humiliate herself with theatrics. She was going to humiliate them with silence, strategy, and precision, and it started the very next morning, while her husband was still basking in the thrill of running off with her sister, thinking he'd won. She was already on the phone, not crying, not begging, just making calls. Calm, clipped, decisive. First, the lawyer. See, what her husband didn't realize was that the house they lived in, it was in her name. She'd been the one on the mortgage. He had contributed, sure, but not enough to stake a claim. The lawyer confirmed it. The house, the equity, the security, it all stayed with her. Second, the finances. She quietly closed the joint accounts. Moved her money into one he couldn't touch. Froze the credit cards before he had a chance to rack up some new charges with his shiny new girlfriend. Third, the story. Because in any scandal, narrative is power. And she wasn't about to let them own the narrative. She called her mom first, telling her the truth in a steady, controlled voice. Then her closest relatives. She didn't whine. She didn't rage. She simply laid it out. He's gone. With her. They betrayed me. And then she added the killer line. I don't want anyone contacting her. Family chooses sides. And you all know where you belong. By the end of the day, the lines were drawn. The family wasn't neutral. The family wasn't divided. The family was with her. Her sister, shut out, isolated, her husband, stranded in loyalty limbo. And the best part? Neither of them even realized it was happening yet, because while they were busy playing house and sneaking around, trying to justify their betrayal, she was building her case like a general preparing for war. I only know this because a week later, she invited me back over. She was glowing. Not in a happy, new love way. In a terrifying, I'm 10 steps ahead way. Over wine and half smiles, she told me everything. How she had already filed the divorce papers. How she'd included the evidence, screenshots of messages, dates, receipts, making sure the cheating was on record. Her husband couldn't contest it. He couldn't flip it. He couldn't spin the story. She smirked as she told me, he thought he left me, but really, I left him the second I found out. He just doesn't realize it yet. And then, the cherry on top, the sister. At first, the sister thought she had won. She had the man, the drama, the spotlight. She flaunted it. Little posts online, carefully worded captions that didn't name names, but everyone in their circle understood. But those posts didn't last long, because the comments started rolling in. Family members, mutual friends, co-workers. No one was congratulating her. No one was cheering. Instead, people were disgusted, calling her out, unfollowing her. whispering behind her back. The attention she craved turned sour. Fast, and then, when the novelty wore off, the husband started slipping, because let's be honest, a man who cheats on his wife with her sister isn't exactly the picture of loyalty. He went from thrilling to brooding, from passionate to distant. Within weeks, cracks formed. Arguments spilled. He wasn't the charming escape anymore. He was just him. And she? She was stuck with the very man who proved he couldn't be trusted. Meanwhile, my neighbor? She was thriving. The house was hers. The family was hers. The sympathy was hers. And best of all, the control was hers. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She didn't throw herself at their feet. She calmly stripped them of every advantage they thought they had. And I'll never forget the way she described it to me that night, her eyes glittering in the dim kitchen light. They thought they broke me. But all they did was hand me the scissors. And I cut them both clean out. Her husband reduced to living in borrowed space, reputation shredded. Her sister exiled from the very family she wanted to impress. And her sitting at the head of the table, calm, collected, untouchable. That was her revenge, not fire, not fury, just erasure. And I'll be honest with you, I'm sitting there across from her. I didn't know if I was terrified of her or in awe. Maybe both. Because when betrayal runs that deep, when the wound comes from the very people who swore to love and protect you, maybe the most devastating revenge isn't screaming in their faces. Maybe it's living so well, so untouchably, that they have to choke on their own regret. And if you ask me, that's exactly what she did. Reflective wrap-up, so in the end, she didn't lose. Not really. She walked away with her house, her family, her dignity. And they walked away with nothing but each other. And the bitter taste of knowing they'd both been outplayed. Because betrayal might cut deep. But nothing cuts deeper than revenge served cold, calculated, and calm. Outro Satai. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button. And tell me in the comments, who do you think was worse here? The cheating husband or the backstabbing sister? And of course, don't forget to subscribe for more true stories where betrayal meets karma. Until next time, keep your popcorn ready. The shouting matches, the slamming doors, the screech of tires, they became memories. The neighborhood returned to its usual hum of lawnmowers and kids on bikes. On the surface, life looked normal again, but just under that surface, the aftershocks of betrayal were still rippling. I'd see my neighbor sometimes out in her garden. She looked different now, not broken, never broken, but sharper, like a sword that had been through fire and come out stronger, shinier, deadlier. She carried herself with a kind of quiet confidence that almost dared anyone to cross her again. And then, one afternoon, the twist came. I was pulling into my driveway when I spotted a car I didn't recognize parked near her house. Not the BMW. Not her husband's sedan. Something older, worn down, and sitting on her porch steps was her sister. Head bowed, shoulders slumped. It was the first time I'd seen her back since that explosive day she rolled up like some Beverly Hills queen. Now? She looked smaller, diminished, almost desperate. I froze in my car, watching from a distance. The door opened. My neighbor stepped out, arms folded, eyes cold. Her sister stood quickly, stammering something I couldn't hear. Gesturing, pleading. But my neighbor? She didn't flinch, didn't soften. She just shook her head slowly, like she was swatting away a mosquito. Then, in one swift motion, she turned and went back inside, leaving her sister standing alone on the porch. Minutes. Later, the sister trudged back to her car, climbed in, and drove away. That was it. No reconciliation, no second chances, just silence. It hit me then. Revenge isn't always fireworks. Sometimes it's shutting the door so firmly that the person on the other side has no choice but to feel the weight of their own regret. And what about the husband? Word spread, as it always does in small communities. He was still bouncing between couches, still clinging to the sister, though everyone could see the cracks widening. At work, people whispered. In family circles, he was a ghost. His shiny escape had turned into a cage, and he was the one who locked himself inside it. Meanwhile, my neighbor was moving forward. Not loudly, not dramatically, just steadily. She repainted the porch. She planted new flowers. She even adopted a rescue dog, whose bark now filled the air where once there had only been shouting. Life wasn't perfect, but it was hers. Entirely hers. One evening, as I walked past her yard, she caught my eye. For the first time since everything happened, she smiled. A real smile, not the bitter smirk I'd seen before. "At least," she said softly, almost to herself, "I didn't lose anything important." And this time, I believed her. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't what you take from someone else. It's what you refuse to let them take from you. Reflective wrap-up, Part 5 tone. So if there's one thing I learned from watching this storm unfold, it's this. Betrayal will hurt. It will cut deeper than you think you can survive. But revenge doesn't have to be rage. Sometimes the most devastating revenge is building a life so strong, so untouchable, that the people who hurt you have to watch it grow without them. And, trust me, that burns longer than any screaming match ever could. Final outro CTA. If you stayed with me through this wild ride, thank you. And now I want to hear from you. Which hit harder? The betrayal from the husband or the betrayal from the sister? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I'm curious. And if this story gave you goosebumps, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and keep your popcorn ready. Because with neighbors like these, you never know when the next season is about to start.